Hi, everybody. Welcome.
No, Torrey.
Oh, what?
It's me. I'm reading for you. So
Oh,
I'll edit this out. But yeah, all right. Just a moment of silence so I can cut this out. Hi, everyone. My name is Cerisi FNL. I'm the founder of the Bronx's Bronx Book Festival. And I have the wonderful pleasure of introducing the Coming of Age panel, which will be moderated by Torrey Maldonado. Torrey is the critically acclaimed author of What Lane, Tight, and Secret Saturdays. He is a teacher in Brooklyn, New York, where he was born and raised. His books reflect his students and their experiences. Hi, Torrey.
hey, how you doing?
Do you want to hold up your book? Let everyone see what book.
There you go.
Awesome. What Lane? And I will let you introduce the other panelists and take it from here.
Awesome. So everybody, just to offer some context, this panel is called the Coming of Age panel. And to offer further context, we are in a pandemic, and all around us, there's a lot going on. We're seeing the importance of Black Lives Matter and the need for diverse books. I had a conversation with my mom recently where I was feeling kind of down, and she told me something. She said, why don't you go play that song, Joy and Pain? You know, joy, pump it up, and pain, right? Or Al Green, that also talking about the yin and the yang. And the reason why I'm so happy that we have this panel is because there's a lot of pain, and people on this panel, they offer the contrast too. They show the joy in our stories. So without further ado, I'd like to talk about our first panelist. Our first panelist is who I call the First Lady of Publishing. She is our she's our Michelle Obama, and uniquely herself. Her name is Cheryl Willis Hudson. She's an author, an editor, and co-founder and editorial director of Just Us Books, an independent company that focuses on Black interest books for children and young adults. Cheryl has written over 24 books. So if you want a leading authority, you're in the right place. She also has been a part of the Children's Book Committee for PEN America and has been a diversity consultant to various ed publishers. And we can't talk about Cheryl Willis Hudson without talking about the first man of publishing, our chief of state, Wade Hudson. He's the president and CEO of Just Us Books, an independent publisher of books for children and teens. Wade has received numerous awards, and the list goes on and on. I'll just give you a little sample. The New Jersey Stephen Crane Literary Award, the Ida B. Wells Institutional Leadership Award. There's so much that it's a mouthful. It's hard to even get it out. I'd like to introduce our next panelist. And next panelist is Debbie Michiko Florence, and she's the author of the Jasmine Toguchu chapter books. These are Junior Library Guild selections. She's a third-generation Japanese American and native Californian. Debbie lives in Connecticut with her husband, a rescue dog, rabbit, and 2 ducks. Our next panelist is Jamia Wilson, and another leading authority. She's the executive director and publisher of the Feminist Press, an activist, writer. Wilson has contributed to New York Magazine, the New York Times. I'm going to have a mouthful again because the list goes on and on. She's the author of Young, Gifted, and Black, and a co-author of Roadmap for Revolutionaries. Our last but not least panelist is someone who has bars for days. Her and I have gone back and forth remembering some of the greats, the founders of hip hop. This is Zoboi. She is the New York Times best-selling author of My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich. That was her middle grade debut. She has young adult novels too. I know you heard about Pride and American Street. A librarian in Missouri told me that American Street was so good that not only she devoured it, but she came home and found it literally devoured by her dog. Her dog had eaten it up. So she's also the recipient of 5-star reviewed books, and the list of her books, like Black Enough, it goes on and on and on. So I don't want to just go through the shopping list of everybody's awards and accolades. Instead, I would love for these shining stars of our publishing world to just get on and shine their lights. So how would we like to begin? Can I start with a question, or can we pass the mic to somebody who would like to volunteer and jump in? Okay, so this question, I'm gonna start with a question. It comes from Morgan Jackson. She is in Las Vegas. And this question is for everyone. She brought the heat from Las Vegas. She wants to know, how do we tell the coming of age story where it includes the struggle of oppression, but also includes universality of coming of age? Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about joy and pain, how do you do that? How do you create books where you are balancing the joy and the pain, the dark and the light?
I'm Cheryl, and there's a great way to share individual stories of joy and pain. I wrote this book, Brave Black First. It's a collection of stories about coming of age. It's Black women who did something remarkable, did something because they were courageous. We talk about people like Harriet Tubman, but also talk about people like Ruby Bridges. And a lot of us know the story of Ruby Bridges, who was someone who helped to change the world when she was 6 years old by being the first Black child to integrate the school in New Orleans. So I think you can share the story of somebody's individual energy and just some act that they have of just going to school. Going to school was a traumatic experience for Ruby because there were mobs of people. She had to be protected by U.S. Marshals. She ended up being the only child in the class for an entire year because none of the white students wanted to go to school with her. But in terms of the growth of her as an individual, she came of age and ushered in a whole era of civil rights activism by just taking that kind of stand. So there are great stories and great learning experiences that you can share. And this just happens to be biography rather than a fictionalized story, but it's a real story and it can apply to kids today.
Yeah, I just finished the first draft of my coming of age memoir, growing up in the 60s in the South, and sort of reliving some of those experiences has been eye-opening for me because there certainly was joy and pain in growing up. And I think it's a matter of being honest about those experiences. Oftentimes we tend to look at the problems or the challenges, and overlook those happy experiences that also shape who we are and help to fashion us into the kind of adults that we grow into being. For example, I had forgotten about several little incidents that really had an impact on me. There was a gentleman in our community who owned the funeral home. There were basically Black businesses because in my little hometown of Mansfield, it was really two worlds. There was a white world and then there was a Black world. And we had our own businesses. So this gentleman actually owned the funeral home. But what he did, he was like one of the caretakers of the community, and he looked out for the young people. And he gave me one of my first opportunities to speak in public. When I really didn't have faith in myself and I was afraid, he pushed me. I had forgotten about that, but in writing my memoir, it sort of came back. And then other experiences like that really brought smiles to my face, So I think it really is telling the full story about our experiences, their joy, and obviously pain.
I think all of that comes with writing a well-rounded and nuanced character, a child character. to create a nuanced character is to show their joys and their pains. And that character has to interact with the adults in their lives and their environment. And if we are writing about characters of color living in the United States, there is some pain that's going to come with that. It might be observing family members going through hardships or what's happening in their neighborhoods. So I think that goes with craft writing. It's part of craft. When we are telling a story, the story is that the character has to evolve and grow over time. And that is the definition of coming of age. You grow into yourself, you become an adult, and becoming adult is becoming aware of how the world functions and the highs and lows of all of that. So I think it's part of storytelling where joy and pain has to be part of the story and has to be part of the character's growth and journey.
Yeah, Evie, you're exactly right. And Torrey didn't mention, but I have my debut middle grade novel as well. It's Keep It Together, Keiko Carter. And as Evie was saying, part of the character's growth has to be changing. And in this particular story, there's a character, a boy, who says microaggressions, racist things to my main character, who's half Japanese American. And she just kind of takes it and smiles or questions, oh, maybe he didn't really mean it that way. And it took many drafts until I finally was able to get her angry and finally speak up for herself, because my experience was not that. I grew up with don't make waves, don't speak up, don't, just be quiet. And so it was really hard for me to make my character speak up. But of course, without her doing that, as someone said, she wasn't modeling a way for our youth to be able to learn how to find their voices and speak up rather than let people push their racism, microaggressions, misconceptions onto the young reader. So I think that's, you have the pain, but also to give young readers a way of seeing how they can work through it, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with that. A big part of what I think motivates a lot of my writing, and specifically how Andrea Pippins, who illustrated our book, Young, Gifted, and Black, and I were endeavoring to do, was to kind of explore the values that we all connect with as humans, and to have a celebratory book about Black changemakers throughout history from all across the world in the diaspora, but also to talk about the commonality of what it means to have specific interests or talents or strengths as a young person, and how those can inspire who you grow up to be and how you use those strengths to grow yourself and grow your community and to impact the world. And we're finding just from the resonance we're experiencing from children who read this book from all walks of life, that much of what they gather from the book is, yes, a strong understanding of the impact that Black people have made worldwide, but also around what it means to follow one's dreams, what it means to stick to something and see it play out, what it means to fail and learn from it, what it means to grow as a result of adversity. And it was also really important for us to be really clear and accessible language about the different obstacles that our change makers had to endure in their life. And that's why it was important for us in curating who we'd feature, because 52 Black leaders is not far enough for as many as deserve to be in this book, was to show a diversity of experiences, a diversity of opportunities that people had, opportunities they didn't have, obstacles they overcame, challenges they endured, and identities among Black people too, to show the diversity, to show people like Alexandra Dumas, to show Matthew Henson, to show Maya Angelou, to show Mallory Blackman. So we were trying to transcend time and space also in that, to show that these themes are universal, that coming of age, whether it happened in the 1800s or now, has some common themes, and how the things that happen in your life, bad or good, can inform how you show up in the world as you get older.
Yep.
Yep.
You know, that goes back to that saying that art often imitates life. And when all of you were speaking, I could just feel the people who have sent me questions. I could feel them smiling, because I noticed on each of their lists of questions, this one question was the theme that ran through. How has your experiences shaped the books that you create? And we got a little bit of that when Debbie was talking about, you know, when she was younger, don't make waves. And her character does a great job. Keiko does a great job of modeling, speaking up, and learning how to use her voice. And I just want to ask everybody, you know, how do your books reflect you? How did your experiences shape what you create?
So I'll start. So my life as an ice cream sandwich is based on a very quirky, strange little girl who moves, comes to stay with her father for one summer in Harlem. And, you know, when I was starting to write this, I was deciding whether or not I make it third person or first person, because she's so out of this world. So I decided to just write this story the way I hear her and see her. And it's basically me as a 12-year-old Evie. And she's hard to understand, because I was hard to understand. I had a very hard time connecting with the kids in my neighborhood, because I was coming from another culture, coming from another background, and I had some really, really interesting interests. So because I played differently, I did not connect with the kids in my neighborhood. While they were playing double dutch and having breakdancing battles, I wanted to play dolls or play like imaginary spaceship. And I love the Twilight Zone and stuff like that. So I really wanted to, someone described it as like unscrewing the top of her head and throwing the reader right in there. And you might not know what's going on. And this was my way of writing about the imaginative child. When you are skipping along down the street, what is it that you're thinking about? And what sort of imaginative world do you create in your head? And this is just me trying to figure out, what if I really created this really, really strange character and I didn't pull her out of thin air? This is me. And so I poured myself, my cerebral self, into this book. I didn't write it with my heart. I wrote it with my brain in a way, in that this is what she's thinking and this is how she navigates the world. And right now she's not moving with her heart. She's moving through the world through her imagination. And I'm so happy that I was able to experiment in that way. And this is an experimental book. So for me, this is one aspect of myself, my love of science fiction, my love of cerebral world building and Star Trek and Star Wars, and seeing where science fiction and hip hop converge in one summer in 1984. So I cannot write any character without putting myself into it, or else I don't know how to not do that. So every character, even if it's a male, a teen boy who's incarcerated, that is still part of me. And it's not about an incarcerated teen. It's about a teen who is trying to reignite his love of art. And that's an aspect of me that I'm putting into that character. And all of that goes into craft and creating well-rounded, nuanced child characters.
Yeah, and one of the things, since we're talking about coming of age, one of the things I really loved, Evie, about your character is that she obviously is very different from the girls that she's meeting in Harlem. They're all into, right? They're kind of into boys, and they're into being with their crew and doing things. But I keep want to call her E. Grace, but what her name was?
Ebony Grace.
Ebony Grace.
You're right.
Because that
she
was
is
her.
Like E. Grace.
E. Grace.
Yeah.
Starfleet. But she was kind of all in her own world. And that's one of the things that I find striking about this age, is that they're developing at such different rates. And in talking about who we are and our characters, I think I embodied all three of the girls, the best friends. Keiko Carter, who is the peacekeeper. She just wants everyone to get along. That's a little bit of me. Her best friend, Audrey, who's kind of like, this is the way it's going to be. We're doing it my way. Yeah, I was kind of like that too at that age. And Jenna, the other best friend, really wants to just be kind of left alone. She doesn't really want to talk about her feelings. Yeah, that was a little bit of me too. So just like Evie was saying, a little bit of me is embodied in almost all the characters.
Yeah, the same thing for me. I just jotted down some words. When I was growing up, I was very inquisitive, searching, trying to find meaning, find a place to be, ask questions. So all the characters that I've created, are pretty much like I was when I was growing up in Mansfield, Louisiana, trying to find my way in a segregated society. And also in an environment where many of the people around me had accepted their place, and I could not accept my place as a young Black boy growing up. I knew something was wrong with it, and I questioned it, even though often I was like alone when I was doing the questioning. So the characters that I create are pretty much like I was when I was growing up. So they're always inquiring, pushing, looking for solutions to problems, even though the problem may be small problems at the time. And I just cannot, I'm still trying to come to grips with that little Black boy growing up and coming of age in Mansfield, because I'm still, as an adult, as an elder now, I'm still asking some of those same questions.
I think for me, I haven't developed characters per se. I love research. I love going to the library. I was your prototypical nerd. My mother, I dedicated this book to my mom, who was a school teacher and who was always telling me, if I ask a question, well, go look it up. So we had books in our home, but basically it was a set of encyclopedia. And I think I read the entire World Book and Popular Science and encyclopedia. I love research. So this collection, which is African-American women, Black women who were first, who were leaders, from Michelle Obama to Harriet Tubman to Serena Williams, they capture something of the what I kind of wanted to be. I wanted to be a research scientist, because I came of age during the space age and went to science fairs and loved writing book reports. So basically the kind of writing that I really love involves a lot of research, and it's reflective. And what I really wanted to do in portraying each one of the 50 women who are in this collection is some kernel of who they were as children, or during their coming of age years, that propelled them into what they became as adults. So you'll find that Michelle Obama, we talk about her being a reader and wanting to achieve and wanting to be excellent. And I think that the people that you see in biographies can be role models for you. And that's what propelled me to really write this collection. And the thing about it is that throughout the book, you'll see incredible artwork, and then a lot of research notes in the back of the book that will take you to someplace else in the Smithsonian, where you can actually find more information about the people that we write about, including someone like Maya Angelou. And the artwork is just incredible.
Add anything?
I hear you.
Hey, Jamia, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's beautiful. And I think I'm just responding to seeing your beautiful book and having read your books, but to see Maya Angelou there, just feeling also the strong sense of being grateful for the ancestors who paved the way. in this moment, that the ability, whenever these hard moments happen, I find myself going back to the books of the people who came before, who saw hard times like these and transcended them for a roadmap of where to go in the present and how to get to the future. And on 11/9/2016, I found myself in that place where I just thought, how did we get here? And then I came back to my bookshelf that night after being at the Javits Center where we got the news, and I saw the autobiography of Assata Shakur just kind of fell off the shelf. And so seeing the picture of Mother Maya, as I like to call her, in your book, and hearing you talk about your work and seeing how you've paved the way for people like me to be in this work, I'm also just really grateful to look at the stories and to connect with those who have been here, who have seen these hard times before and have somehow made a way out of no way to get here, and know that that same connection is what we are tapping into right now and what we're going to need to continue to tap into in the future, thinking about 1968 and how close everything we're experiencing now feels to that, how close the events of 1970 sadly align with what we are experiencing now. So yes, I feel a tremendous connectiveness to those who've been here before, and every day kind of wake up and think, oh, what would James Baldwin call on us to do if I could call him right now? And as a younger person saying, I'm struggling with this, what would he say in his wisdom? What would I learn from these books and stories that others have left behind, or the stories they're still telling about their lives? What would Ida have to say about the stories we should tell right now?
Yeah, there's that sense of making things right, and all that runs through all of your works. Thinking about Debbie right now, thinking about Ibby right now, I'm thinking about how Keiko in Debbie's book, she wants to keep, she plays a mediator, she plays a peacemaker amongst her friends, but she also wants to keep things together in her home environment. And there's some serious things that are happening there. And then I'm thinking about this line from Ibby's book where she says, you know, Bianca is definitely going to need my help. And that runs through your book too, where she's trying to keep things together. She even does something, you know, with that envelope and that money later on. She's trying to, you know, solutions. All books offer seeds of solution in it. So I just wanted to talk about that. Like, how did you decide the issues that you decided to season your books with? Like, you know, we hear about divorce and you know, Keep It Together, and then we also hear, you know, inside Ibby's book that there's family, you know, the mom and dad aren't together. So how did you decide on these things?
Well, writing about a 12-year-old, so this is my debut middle grade, and this was the first book that I sold, and it wasn't like I had sold it with 3 chapters, so I kind of like figured it out as I went along. But if we all remember 12, there were some things that we kind of knew and a lot of things we didn't know. And for me, one of those main things was family secrets, things that were happening to the adults around us that we could not completely comprehend with our 12, 11, 13-year-old minds. And of course, we would try to fix those things, right? Because it was an easy fix. We hadn't lived long enough yet and experienced life to the fullest yet to understand that these are very complicated issues. And, you know, I would do little things like write letters as a child to try to fix something. And for me, growing up in a working class and basically poor neighborhood, I thought money could fix everything. If I could find $1 somewhere, if I got $20 from another relative, I could give it to another relative who could probably use it. So in my own mind, money could fix everything when things weren't going right. So of course, and this is part of coming of age, where you want to make everything better because something has shifted when the adults are not acting the way that they're supposed to do. Something shifts in your environment. It impedes on your own happiness, and you're going to try to save the day because you figured it out. You're 12 now, you're 13, you're a big kid. You could do things on your own. So why not fix it, right? In the best way you know how.
Yeah, exactly. That age is like you're on that cusp. You're not a kid anymore. So you feel like now you've got it together. And very similarly, Keiko's parents, they don't talk to her about things because she's a child. And Keiko watches her best friend, Jenna Sakai. Jenna's parents go through a divorce, and Keiko watches her best friend change in the course of it because she internalizes her pain. So she's no longer the same person, the same friend she is. So Keiko's dealing with that, but then she notices things are changing at home. Her mom's busier with work and she's not around a lot, and she's not there for Keiko and her younger sister. So of course, Keiko thinks that really bad things are happening in her family, and she's trying to keep her sister calm by saying everything's okay while also trying to figure out what's going on. But yeah, ultimately, as a 12-year-old, you're trying to, like Evie says, fix things because you think you can. And also, since you don't understand the world, you're also storytelling. And sometimes things are worse than you, are not as bad as you think they are.
If I could say something really quickly, Debbie, you wrote this book so well that I was wondering what was going on between the mom and the dad. And I had all these things happening in my head. And I was like, is it going to be this? It better not be this. So thank you for keeping me on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Thank you.
I'd like to also include Cheryl and Wade and also Jamia in this, because we were talking about, how do you choose these issues? And when we're talking about the issue of choice, how did you choose to center the trailblazers and the figureheads that you chose?
Yeah, so that was really hard. And it's so funny. Every once in a while, I'll get a really passionate letter, some nicer than others, about people being really upset about who was not included in the book. Right. And I, want to write them back and give them the spreadsheet of all of the people that we originally thought about and wanted to bring in, and the metric and which we used to curate to say, how many people with disabilities are we going to feature? How many people from the LGBTQ community? How do we represent diasporic diversity as well as language diversity? Well, as and me being on the publishing end in my day job, understanding the fact that the publisher and distributor of the original book was based in the UK with distribution in Australia and New Zealand, right? And all of those conversations are complex and nuanced, but I always want to explain to the readers that I understand their feelings around what it means to connect so much with some and many of the figures in the book, and then to look in the book and to say, oh, okay, I found Josephine Baker, who I love, but why haven't I found, for example, Prince in the book, who I also love? And so, I think that one of the things I've come to say to folks is, one, you should totally let my publisher know who you want to see in it. You're bound to have a second, a third, and many more volumes. There's so many young, gifted, and Black people around the world. We could keep going with this, but then also to use this as an opportunity to talk to young people about creating these stories themselves. So often we will talk to people in different workshops or online and say, hey, send me your version of a page that should have been included in the book. I know we did the job, but we didn't get it completely done because there's only 52 weeks in the year, and we structured the book based on focusing on one trailblazer a week. Who would you add? And what came from that was just so exciting, because so many of the young people who wrote us would send us their version of it, and they would add superpowers or extra context or infographics and other things that they would want to pull out, or other facts that maybe I didn't come across in my research about specific figures. So what I've loved about the book and the greatest joy is that it's become such an interactive experience. And often I like to go back to folks and say, hey, help write this with us. Just because we started the conversation doesn't mean that it's over. And now we have a baby book coming out for Young Gifted and Black called YGB Baby that actually is going to have a mirror in it. So babies will see themselves in the book. So I think it's an ongoing conversation. And I, felt like the people who are curated in this list with the metric I talked about are in it, but also kind of from the ancestor place. I'm just a really spiritual person, also really quirky. I feel like I could be one of your characters in terms of quirky Black girls growing up. And I'd sat down and thought, whose whispers do I feel are coming to me that need to be in this book? Who wants to be heard? And let me channel it.
Jamia, if I could say, when you said that Asada's book fell on you, like it fell into your home, and we went from things like jumping out at you to listening to the whispers. I have to say, when you were talking about getting these letters and saying, people to have superpowers, I was like, did Ibby send those letters?
I want to add that while writing My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich, I was working on Octavia Butler's biography, and I infused a lot of what I think her childhood was like into this character. Wow. She has got to be one of the most genius, cerebral people, women, people to have lived. She kept a lot of her diary entries as a child. She was 10 writing novels.
Wow.
And her passions were horses and Mars. And she did not fit in with anywhere. She did not fit in anywhere. And she was a keen observer of everything. And she was like, she was out there in terms of her imagination. So those ants, even while creating fictional characters, I feel like I am pulling from real life people who have passed on. So again, I don't think in creating characters, we're pulling it out of thin air. We are writing real people into these fictional worlds.
Yep. I felt like Cheryl's book and also Wade's book was in conversation with Jamia's book. And I was asking myself, I was like, wow, how did you choose out of the multitude of amazing Black women? How did you make these choices?
Well, it's an interesting selection because this was a collaboration between the Smithsonian and myself, or asked to write this book. And it had to relate to people and histories that were evident in the museum. That was kind of a draw because there's a lot of research in where you can find a portrait of Michelle Obama or Dorothy Heights hats or something that's historical, but making history real. So like Jamia, we started off with over 100 people and wanted to put all of them here, but you can only have so many pages. So kind of narrowed them down to had to have Aretha Franklin. Had to have Aretha Franklin. So the first person to do something, the first poet, African-American poet to have her work published, that became one of the criteria. And I think Wade can talk to the same thing, not in terms of selection in We Rise, because we also did that together, but narrowing it down, it was hard. It was hard.
Well, the idea for this particular book, We Rise, We Resist, We Raise Our Voices, came in 2016 following the election of Donald Trump. So much toxicity around, and we knew that young people and children were impacted by all that negative energy and that verbiage that were coming from the president-elect. So I started thinking, what can we do to encourage young people, to let them know that in spite of what's going on, that it will be all right. And so we came with the idea of inviting book creators to share their words of wisdom and love and experiences, and also their images as far as the artists are concerned, to let kids know that it will be okay. And so we have 50 creators, children's book creators who have contributed to this particular book. And I'm going to read a poem because I think the poem that I wrote, which was the first piece written for this book, speaks to the good and the bad sort of working in tandem and how you deal with them. But I also want to talk about the follow-up anthology that's coming out in September. And Torrey is a contributor to this one. This is called The Talk, Conversations About Race, Love, and Truth. It will be released in September, and it is a timely anthology, and it speaks to what we are going through right now. But I would like to just read the poem I wrote for We Rise. It's called, What Shall We Tell You? What shall we tell you when our world sometimes seems dark and uninviting? What shall we tell you when hateful words that wound and bully are thrown like bricks against a wall, shattering into the debris? What shall we tell you when respect for others and treating others as we wish to be treated appear as yesterday's borrowed wish? What shall we tell you when our differences are juggled like fragile eggs that could be smashed at a moment's impulse? What shall we tell you? What shall we tell you? We shall tell you that love, like cream and milk, will rise to the top, and hatred and distrust will be revealed as imposters. We shall tell you that peace, desirable like a restful night after a long day at play, is not far away. Reach for it. We shall tell you that respect for others, like a delicious ice cream bar dripping on holding fingers, tastes better than contempt. We shall tell you that we love you, all of you, and because we love you, we will be there to help bring light to dark places. We will be there with peace and justice as our weapons and love as a soothing salve to comfort and embrace. We shall tell you that because we will be there for you, always be there for you, it will be all right. It will be all right. What shall we tell you? And this is a beautiful illustration that Floyd Cooper did for this particular piece.
Wade, I was hoping if you could give a little background information on who the superstar Floyd Cooper is.
Floyd Cooper is an illustrator of almost 100 books for children. He started his career in 1988 illustrating Eloise Greenfield's book, Grandpa's Face. And he's like one of the pioneers in children's book publishing, particularly as it relates to Black book creators. And in fact, we have a series of interviews that we just launched today on YouTube. And Floyd is the first person that we're interviewing for that series.
If I could tell a quick story. So when I was asked if I wanted to participate in this panel, if I wanted to moderate this panel, I didn't know who would be my co-panelists, who would be on the panel. So, you know, when you pull the lever and you're like, no whammies, no whammies, no whammies, no whammies. And when Debbie's name came down, I said, yes, because Debbie, you're super cool in real life. And when Cheryl's name and Wade's name came, I said, yes, it was another yes, because you're also very cool. And when it became, my eyes popped, and I was like, I'm hitting the jackpot. Yes. And then we got Jamia too. And so this is a yes, 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 yes. And I want all the viewers to know that just like Floyd Cooper and everyone here, you know, we have people who are leading the field in terms of creating work that we need, and yet these are real, chill, cool people. So I just want to let everybody know that I'm going to pull the curtain back and let everybody know that, you know, the wizards that we all are, that you are the real deal.
Thank you.
I'm so glad.
Thank you, Torrey.
Oh, you're welcome. Wade, I'm so glad you started talking about the talk, because some of the questions that I've been asking come from a Missouri librarian named Kristen Shore. She is the president of the Elementary Librarian and Missouri Association. And one of the questions that she had was, we rise, we resist. What's the follow-up? And I told her it's the talk. The talk is like the follow-up. And then so she was hoping that you would talk about the talk. So I'm so happy you talked about the talk.
The talk has a multitude of own voices, and I think the thing that we're talking about now is how we need to talk to one another about racism, about oppression, about social justice, about truth. And there's such a wide range of authors here who deal with that age group, that kind of 8 to 12 middle reader group. And we talk directly about being called out of your name, being called out of and how children of that age
being too fat or being poor.
Yes. You know? So these are talks not just about sex or the talk about what you should do. You're stopped by a police officer, but just crucial conversations, a wide range of conversations that young people coming of age need to have, and parents have historically had with their kids.
And some of the contributors include Derek Barnes, Adam Gibbs, Nikki Grimes, Wade Hudson, obviously, E.B. Lewis, Grace Lynn, Torrey Maldonado,
I know that guy.
Yeah.
Meg Medina, Christopher Myers, and the list just goes on and on and on. There are 30 contributors to this anthology.
Nice.
I just have to say that book is a virtual who's who of the publishing world, and also it's just filled with A-list stars. A lot of I'm seeing right now on social media, people are saying, "Oh, we need books to help our young people have this conversation." And over again, I want to tell them the talk. I wish that the talk was out right now. It's such an essential compilation of conversations. I want to circle things back to the authors that are here and the creators that are here, because you were talking about being in collaboration with the Smithsonian Institute, the African American Museum. When I read all of your works, I felt like I was on the Smithsonian Mall. I was like, I'm going to go over here, I'm going to read Debbie's book and get this experience, which is so cool. And then I go over here and get Ibby's, and then Jamia's, and then the Hudsons. I just want to ask a question. And the question is, why is it so important for you to show the humanity of the characters that you show? Because anyone who walks away from any of your works that we've discussed, you cannot categorize your characters as stereotypes. They're not one-sided. They're all complex, and they are human, and they are essential human beings that need to be in our canon. So I just wanted to talk. Ask you that question. You know, why? Why did you just deliver humanity to us in such a rich way? Why was that important?
Well, I've said it before. Growing up, I loved books about friendship and romance. And so I was a huge Judy Blume reader. But it wasn't until I was older that I looked back and realized there weren't any books like that with characters that not only looked like me, but had experiences like me. I grew up in Los Angeles at a time where there was a big Japanese American community. And I was fortunate that while I was very aware of being Japanese American and my culture infused my life, I didn't have the experience of being othered until I left California as an adult. So it wasn't until as an adult I looked back and thought, I wish there had been books about friendship or romance with Japanese American characters, because either they were filled with stereotypes, or the Japanese American are portrayed as the enemy, or the Japanese are portrayed as the enemy if you read historical fiction books, or the immigrant experience, which again, I'm third generation, so that wasn't my experience. And then my daughter, who is biracial, also was saying, where are those books? You know, Japanese Americans can fall in love, they can fight with their friends. So I very consciously wanted to write books that I loved reading, but with characters that looked like me or looked like my daughter or had similar experiences. And so that was important to me.
Debbie, you really succeeded in delivering the romance in the book. My heart was palpitating because I'm a dad of a 12-year-old girl. So when you were talking about certain, you know, the thing is, I want to let everybody know that, Debbie, you don't go there in terms of your material is safe. I feel like
it's very middle grade.
Yes, it's very middle grade. It's great for my daughter to read. But at the same time, some of the crush stuff that you were writing about, I just turned to my daughter and say, "Is this real? You going through this right now?" And she was like, "Oh, Dad, I think I have to answer this call," and then walked out the room. I was like, "Ugh." So I have to thank you for informing me.
I love that. I mean, I think those were the books. I was also such a huge Judy Blume fan. Am a Judy Blume fan, not was. And I got to interview her several years ago for a teen magazine called Rookie. And when I did, it was so funny because it went viral because of what she said about sexuality. And what you were just saying made me think about how, you know, even then, Judy Blume was who we gravitated to in the library because she was talking about what it's like to get your period. Yes. She was talking about what it's like to have a disability, what it's like to have a crush, what it's like to be the first Black person to move into your neighborhood. I had that experience, and I got a copy of Iggy's House, and I read about that. And although it happened to me many years later, there were still undertones of covert connection that I could connect with and align with. So I love that you are talking about these human experiences we have in accessible ways. I think it's so important. And I know it's what I was seeking and why I strive to write the things that maybe parents might also need resources to give their kids if they don't feel comfortable having those conversations directly with them, that they can do the books together. They can engage in that conversation. I know I was given a copy of Our Bodies, Ourselves when I was 13, and given the Reader's Digest Guide to Love and Sex, which I'm still traumatized by. But I appreciate that there were adults who were parenting me who thought about the fact that they wanted me to read the material and come back with questions. I feel that there's a mindfulness about that and a respect for the intellect of young people, which is what I try to do in my writing around the humanity piece. I really respect my readers as smart, brilliant youth. And sometimes I will get critiques and certain reviews that they'll say, oh, we felt that this was too much for a reader of a certain age. And I believe that one of the reasons I'm able to do what I did today was that I was always addressed as a rationally thinking, critically thinking being by my parents who were professors, that I was always taught that I had the capacity to grab hold of big ideas, no matter what the age.
Yeah. I think that what you're saying, Torrey, about being on the mall and the humanity in the books that we write and edit, it is so important. Wade and I started Just Us Books over 30 years ago to really address the issue of lack of diversity in the marketplace. Because, and the first book was an alphabet book, a counting book. Why can't you say A is for Africa, or A is for an apple, an alligator? Why can't you say C is for cornrows? And I think the default being othered is something that this country has just done. It's just been there. We are the othered, but we are the universal people as well. So you can have a story about Jamal going to school, just a regular day. He doesn't have to have a big weight on his shoulder about being the first Black kid in his class. He can just enjoy going to school. So I think the more that we write in our own books, all of us, then those stories become normal stories and not just the Black history story or the internment story or the immigrant story. And the universal voices are there, and that's why the humanity shows. And everybody can read the books that we write and we publish.
And when we were growing up, you know, there were few books that we could read that addressed our experiences. I had characters who looked like us. And for many of us, it was like saying, you didn't do anything important, or you are less than, you know. And even in the books that I enjoyed reading and the stories I enjoyed reading about white characters, I just sort of worked my way through them to find ways to connect through the humanity in the story, you know. But it's so important to be able to see characters who look like you, or to have your experiences validated in a book, you know. And that was not what we had access to when we were growing up. So we wanted to make sure that our kids and then other kids had an opportunity to learn more about their ancestors, to learn more about their experiences, and also to just see characters who look like themselves so that they can be validated.
For me, one of the tie-ins to Ibby's book is when you were talking about the Soul Train dances and the Soul Train lines and how people would dress at one point in history and then how that evolved. And, I was like, yeah, definitely. When I was a kid watching the Soul Train, the outfits, those are outfits that you could wear outside too. And then the outfits got racier. And it was happening in the book. And I was just like, oh, you Roberta Flack me. You strumming my pain with your lyrics, with your words.
Well, that was just me trying to show intergenerational connection. My character is connecting with her father's generation and then with her grandfather's generation and hearing what each generation has to say about the other. It's one of the things I really wanted to infuse into this book. And it's historical fiction. So her grandfather's day is like way back when, right? And then it's like new hip hop happening. So I just really wanted to connect all three generations in that way.
One of the things that I had to say is in both your book, Ibby's book, and also in Debbie's book, candy kept coming up to describe certain things. And I have to tell you, Debbie, when you opened your book, the way you opened your book, I had like hit my hand on my head. I said, oh, this is the best. This is one of the best intros to a book that I've ever read. And I hope that you read that first page about chocolate. Oh, I also have to say, when we look at Ibby's book, there's so many candy references when she's talking about here. There's this one line where she says, she'd say with her hard candy voice. I was like, okay. And then there's another part here where she was talking about the words, no joke city gibberish, except it's more like having a dozen pieces of butterscotch or peppermint candy in the mouth. And then you start to describe friends, chocolate. I just love the food and chocolate references in your book. I was hoping you could, sample a little bit of that, read a little bit of that to
candy, like candy from the corner store. Well, 5-cent candy, quarter waters, ices for the summertime. Yes. I had to include that. That was my childhood. Like sugar was like sugar was king back, or queen sugar was the thing back there. Of course, if I'm writing about a 12-year-old, there's lots of suger.
There was
and pizza.
There was definitely times where I was reading both of your books and I felt like I might have needed an insulin shot.
I always tell people, get chocolate, have chocolate when you're reading the book.
This is great. Language is so important. Language, metaphor, similes. It's
fun,
a part
right,
of the
it is.
One of the things that I wanted to hopefully touch on is cultural icons. Why is it so important for all of us to preserve the culture and make sure that we shine a positive light on our cultural icons? Because, Ibby does that in her book, where she's talking about Dougie Fresh. She's talking about, Crazy Legs, a lot of this stuff that I grew up with, And then we have, when we talk about Brave Black First, we got Katherine Johnson, we got Marion McLeod, Bethune, Aretha, we have, so many. So, and also in Jamia's book. So I just wanted to talk about that. Why are you being curators of our cultural legacy?
Culture is just so much a part of who we are. And African-American culture is not complete unless you have music and mentioning of music, or the icons like Ida B. Wells, people who did something to make a mark in history. So it's, if you're brave and if you're Black and if you're first, you've got to be in this book, or maybe in the next book after it. If you're writing biographies, you've got to include that, and culture is so much a part of our history and our legacy.
And they're the reason why we're here.
That's right.
Without them, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also, Debbie, Debbie didn't have to write about Japanese American. You didn't have to write about the Asian experience. There are a lot of authors who decide to write outside of their culture. So you're also a cultural curator and keeping it alive.
Yeah, just trying to infuse all of us. I think we try and infuse our experiences in our writing, and that's what makes it honest and authentic.
Honest, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right now, we are dealing with some crazy stuff. We're dealing with some scary stuff. We have COVID. We see, you know, Black lives being devalued, and the need for our pushback to show that Black lives matter. And if you wanted to have your characters, or if you wanted to say something to the young people and to their families, would you say anything? Would it be a message that you want to share with them?
Make art. Now is a time to create something new. A picture, a poem, a collection of poems. I think parents should encourage their children to create every single day, arts and crafts, to do things with their hands, to create something out of nothing so that they feel empowered. It could be gluing two sticks together. Those two sticks were just two sticks, but now they created a bridge, you know, and that's, I think art is the most empowered thing for young people right now.
Yeah, what did be said?
Yeah. I would say think out of the box and don't allow yourself to be marginalized.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think I'm going to say what I wrote. My second book in the series with Young, Gifted, and Black's title is Step Into Your Power. In every opportunity and every hardship, everything, that just learning that in my life has supported me a great deal. And I think it's important for young people to know that yes, these are hard times, but step into your power. What do you have the power to do? What do you have the power to say? What do you have the power to create? Who do you have the power to build with? And what do you have the power to imagine beyond the point with which we are in right now?
Right.
Man, I wish I was D-Nice the DJ right now, because I play that song. I got the power.
Yes.
You know, so I'm going to read out some of my notes while I was reading all of your books and all your works. I wrote these things that tied all your books together, and you're all going to look at me and say, "Oh, you just came up with that. You're stealing our stuff. You're biting our stuff." I'm so happy that you touched on the issue of power, because I felt like all of your books really are encouraging young people to keep empowered, to keep imagination alive, and also to keep true to yourself, and just to keep on keeping on. So those were some tie-ins. And I promised that I already wrote that stuff down. I didn't just take it from the fabulous stuff that you just shared.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much.
You're welcome.
This was great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.